So I start. So I'm Angela, and as she was mentioning, I'm doing a PhD here in Barcelona, in UPC and Telefónica, and the main topic that I'm studying is how to improve large language models with cognitive processing signals. So today I'm going to explain briefly kind of different projects, all related to this task that I have developed during my thesis with the collaboration of my colleagues. Carlos, Sebastian, Mireia, Serjan, and Yanis, and others, and some of them appear here in this photo that we took last year in a conference. So these are the main things that we are going to cover. First, I will start with an introduction to explain, okay, what is large language models and what is cognitive processing signals. On the related work, I'm going to try to explain what was the state of the art when we started these lines of research, and why we thought, okay, this is something that is worthy to try. And then I'm going to present two projects. OST eye tracking dataset, this one here, with a brief introduction of what is this large language model's attention, and then gaze reward, another framework that we created with a little bit of introduction about why we wanted to enhance the accuracy. And finally, we will finish with some conclusions, and I will explain on what we are working on now. So, beginning with the introduction, first I will start with large language models. And I always like to put first the photo of the transformer. No, it's an architecture that nowadays most of us will know. It was released in 2017 with the paper Attention is All You Need. And even nowadays, 9 years later, almost all large language models are based on this architecture. No? After it was released, I think 2 years later, OpenAI created the first GPT-1 model. They were the first ones to actually try with this unsupervised way with the data on the internet to predict next word. And since then, a lot of things has gone on, a lot of new models and new directions. As I was saying, this now is a huge line of research, and there are, companies that they are created only to do large language models. No? So obviously there is a lot of going on, but in general, they follow like a common recipe. There is this first phase when they are training them of language understanding, and then this is this human alignment or post-training or instruction tuning phase. So we can think like first you teach the model how to speak, and then you teach the model how to speak with humans, no? Like how to follow our instructions or how to communicate with us. In the figure, we see the framework of reinforcement learning from human feedback. That was the first method proposed by OpenAI. Now there are new methods, especially didn't prepare. Sorry? Okay, I hear something, but I don't know if it was a question. So there are new methods, like for example, direct preference optimization, that is also very used nowadays. And there is also a huge line now that they are trying to give feedback with another LLMs, no? Which is called artificial feedback. But again, in general, if we want to start like a common recipe, they are, on the one hand, you need like collect data to understand, okay, what people like. No, we need a proxy of, if we want to align human models with humans, we need to understand what humans like. This would be the first phase. You have prompts with different responses, and you will ask someone, okay, rate this, or tell me which one do you prefer. I put also here the screenshot of ChatGPT, because if you have used large language models enough, probably at some point they have give you 2 answers to the same prompt, and they have asked you, okay, which one do you prefer, no? And they even prompt something like, this data can be used to train new models. So this is the kind of data we're talking here, like one prompt, different responses, and saying which one do you prefer. Later, you will train a reward model that is this green model here. And you want the score, this R would be a score, and you want the score of the response that users prefer higher than the response that obviously they don't prefer. No? Once you have this model, in pink would be like your language model, the one that you want to align with users. You will use this proxy of human preference, human likeness, to actually train this with reinforcement learning. I will do now a little bit of zoom only on the reward model that would be here, the green model. because it's the model that we're going to use later. And in this model, you will have like the prompt, for example, here, no, please summarize this article about reward models, and a response, like a candidate response. And the reward model is actually a large language model. The backbone is a large language model. But in the last layer, now you won't predict a word, you will predict a score. No? So you change the last layer, and for example, here the score is a scalar number. So for example, 1.7. And finally, now we don't talk only about test large language models. No? Now there has been a race of visual large language models or multimodal large language models in general. So now, even when we use whatever we use, whether it's GPT, Gemini, Claude, you can input images, audio, videos, and so on. So again, here is like the general framework of how you can do this. But if you have the large language model here in blue, your input traditionally was only text, okay, this orange embedding, but now you can have another modalities, you encode them, and you can connect them for the input. Here, it can be like as simple as a small neural network, another architectures like Q-former, or even more complex one. But the takeaway is like you can connect a new modality to the text embeddings, and it's your new input. And the same when you generate. You can generate only text, but with a generator, you can now generate images, audio, or new modalities. Finishing with this background, okay, but large language model, we use them all the time, but what are the challenges? And most of these challenges are well known, not only by researchers, but by users, no? Like, first, there is data scarcity. We're starting to hear like they have already used everything that is on the internet. So it will be a data bottleneck, no, to train like better models. It's also very costly, not only about money, but about environmental costs, training and doing inference all the time with these models, and still are not aligned with humans, no, like still, we read it in the newspaper every day, like they are maybe producing harmful content or biased content. And yeah, like still, even if they are useful, they are not there. And finally, they hallucinate a lot. We all experience this, like you can never trust fully what they are saying, no? Like that is completely accurate or faithful. So now I finished with large language models. I'm going to explain briefly the kind of data that we want to use to actually improve this challenge. And after that, in the rest of the presentation, we're going to see how we are actually improving this challenge. So there are other cognitive signal techniques, but in this case, we have used eye tracking. And eye tracking is mainly what you see here on the figure, no? So you can see here a device, and you see someone looking to a screen. With this device, we can actually measure where this person is looking in the screen. You see here a red dot, so you can measure like the attention, where this person is putting the attention. And imagine you have a visual stimuli, okay? So this person is looking to an image. We can have like saliency here within the figure, no? A girl eating an ice cream, and clearly the person that was looking was putting more attention on the ice cream. Or at the same time, you can have the scan pad. We put here an example. This is like the sequence of fixations. And this is the kind of information that we are going to use on images. At the same time, on text, we can record the same kind of information. If we measure where people is putting the attention while they are reading, we have here an example. Imagine that someone is reading this sentence, no? Like CNN wants to change its viewers' habits. The red dots will be the fixations, and you see the arrows, no, like how they are connecting. And you can see like people going backwards, upwards, and so on. With this kind of information, we can compute reading metrics. On the right, we see like different intensities of the color, no, and we can say, okay, in this word, they have put more attention because, I don't know, they have spent 3 seconds, and on the other word, they have spent 2 seconds. We can use this kind of information. We see here on the table some examples that we're going to use later. For example, first fixation duration, the amount of time you consume the first time you focus on a word. Go past time, the amount of time until you reach that word. Total reading time is not only in the first pass, but in general, how much time you have spent on a word, and number of fixations. This is an example. Other people are using other metrics, but in general, we want to encode information on how people is reading this test, okay? But at the same time, there is data scarcity, okay? And yeah, so what happened? There is obviously costly, no, to gather this data. You need the equipment, you need the privacy. There are some privacy issues, and you need people. In our case, like we need people enter our lab, we need to pay them, they need to read, no? And so what happens when we don't have enough data? No? What we do? We train a model on the data we have. So in this case, I put here this model because we are going to use it later. It's based on Roberta, and you have the model, you input the tokens, and then you can predict. In this case, it's like number of fixation, first fixation duration, and so on, and are the metrics that we were seeing before. No, but in this case, we are not asking people to read it, but we are measuring it or we're computing it with a model. And the same we can do it with images. In this case, for example, we have this dashboard here, and maybe we want to extract information, okay, how people is looking into these dashboards. Maybe they are looking for some value in this dashboard, okay? So you will have someone, okay, and they will pay some attention, you have the saliency, but at the same time, you can have a generative model that would predict this saliency. And we put here this example called UNIAC. And yeah, so this example in this model is from Google. They released it last year, if I remember correctly, and they can predict the saliency on an image. In this case, it was web pages. They can predict the scan path, like the sequence of fixations, and they can predict the rating. So what is interesting here is how it's related, no? Like it's related like the explicit feedback, whether my rating on an image and how I'm putting my attention while looking to this image. And this is the main basic of what we are proving, no? Like that there is a connection with this implicit and this explicit feedback. So the related work, we put here this review. We published it last year. I'm going to go briefly through it, but if you want more detail with the QR, you can go to the paper. And mainly, we were asking ourselves, like, okay, what is people doing with these cognitive signals into language models? And so, yeah, how they are using it and what problems are they solving? So, luckily, if I walk you through this figure, you will understand like what we found in the literature. No? There were mainly two lines: enhance language models and explain language models. Okay. So with the text input, in mind, like this is your input, okay, it's a test talking about Formula 1. It's going to enter the model, and then you will have your output, whatever NLP task is. It can be sentiment classification, it can be hate detection, whatever NLP task. And now the same test, you ask someone to read it, no? And you can have like neuroimaging techniques that we are not going to cover today, but there is also a very interesting line of research, or eye tracking that we are going to cover. And imagine that now you're also input this information. And ideally, this accuracy here will improve, no? Like now you don't have only the test, but you have the cognitive state of the person on an average person while they were reading it. And about explaining LLMs, it's the same. You have the input, it enters to the model, and you will have the output, okay, the same. But in this case, you will use the cognitive signals, for example, the eye tracking data here. You will compute the similarity of the attention, no? Like the attention that is going on here and the attention that is going on here. And the same with the representation. With the given state, you can compare it with the neuroimaging technique. That, yeah, as I was saying, we are not going to cover this part today, but there are a lot of works there if you are curious. So LLM attention is exactly what I was explaining. As I was saying, no, language models are based on transformer architecture. So usually you will have embedding layer, you have the tokens, the embeddings, and then you will have in each layer and each head, you will compute the attention. And you at the same time have the attention in a measure of any of the reading metrics that I was saying, whether it's number of fixation, total reading time, and so on. So you can compute the similarity correlation. That is what we did and what we found people were doing, and then we did in our data set. This is what we found. There were different studies, obviously all with eye tracking and with models. Some of them based on the encoder like BERT, decoder like GPT, and some of them were comparing, I don't know, first layer, last layer, all layers, or even attention flows or science. But yeah, in general, like they were trying to study the difference while people were reading and the model were processing it. So with all of this into account, I explain our first project. It's called Open Assistant Eye Tracking Dataset. But first I do like a small recap. Remember, like we want to focus on this second phase, the human alignment phase. And the first step was collecting actually human feedback data. No, like you have prompt, responses, and you want someone to label it. So this is one of our papers. It's called Open Assistant Eye Tracking Dataset, Alignment Signals from Eye Tracking Analysis of Large Language Model Responses. And again, I'm going to cover it briefly, but if you want more detail with the QR, you can go with the paper. And this is exactly what we did, like if we see here, the first step is gather this data. So we replicate this data gathering, but now we are collecting eye tracking data while people is reading it. So they will read one prompt, different responses, and we are going to compare these reading metrics. This is the state of the art when we started. There were obviously other eye tracking corpus while people were reading. For example, Suko and Suko 2, they are very famous, but no one studied it in this task. No, maybe they were collecting data while they were doing sentiment classification or visual question answering, or even like natural reading. But no one actually collected for this framework. Also at this point, eye tracking already proved like was useful for natural language processing tasks, no? And again, like the words that I was explaining before, were this line of research that they were comparing the attention. So this is exactly what we did. We covered this gap. We created for the first time a data set that was actually measuring reading metrics for this task, and we compute different analyses, statistical analysis on the differences between responses, the same with synthetic generated data, and finally, we compare the attention that I'm going to explain now, each of them. So how we create this data set? This is our lab. We have like the devices, and we invited 24 participants. We created 8 subgroups, and we end up with more than 600 trials of like prompt, responses, and everything annotated. We use the Open Assistant conversation dataset, and we replicate exactly how they annotate this dataset, okay? So this is the device that we have, and this is the procedure we were following. There is a prompt with a response. They will rate the first response, then they will read the second response, they will rate it, and then they will choose between responses. This is a screenshot of, for example, one of the responses they were reading. What is important here is that you see, like, the screenshot is only the text in white. The green boxes are the areas of interest. So then the numbers are the fixation. So exactly, people is reading this, we gather these fixations that we number here to give it like the temporal dimension. And then we want to assign these fixations to the words. So then we can compute these reading metrics that we were talking before. You also see numbers in pink and in blue because there is this calibration process, and there are algorithms to actually assign these fixations to the words that I'm not going to explain today, but it's in the paper if someone is curious. So now we understand, okay, we bring participant, we replicate the annotation process, we have this raw data, we assign it to the words, and we have reading metrics. So then we can compare them. And it's what we plot here. Here we will have total reading time, first fixation duration, and number of fixation, but mainly this will be the average value for first fixation duration on the rejected response on all participants. And we study, okay, is there a difference in the reading metrics while the average person is reading the response that later they will reject or not? And we saw like there was a difference. We compute exactly the same, but with synthetic data. And so this is exactly the same analysis on the same responses, same prompts, everything, but it's not the actual data that we collect on the lab. It's data generated by this model that I was presenting before, the one that was based on Roberta. So we saw like the trend was not that present, no? Like you see it's exactly the same, but there is no, this is showing us like there was a statistical significance, and in this case was not. So once we prove like there is a difference, and there is not a difference when we have synthetically generated eye tracking data, we switch to attention analysis. A small recap: we are comparing like the attention on the transformer and the attention on the eye tracking. Okay. And we were using different LLMs. So the input would be the same test that our participant read. We will input these responses to the model, and we try it on different models. first encoder models bidirectional like BERT and Roberta. And then we use encoder models like Llama 2, Mistral, and we use models that have gone through post-training, these human alignment models that are the same as here, but that has gone through post-training, and also pre-trained models. That is the same model, but only after language understanding, only after pre-training. And also reward models. That if we remember, the reward model was exactly doing what we ask our participants to do, no? Like you have a prompt, you have a response, and you want to rank it. So actually these models were the models more aligned to our task. The first thing that we study is the difference between architectures, and layers. In these figures, each figure is a different model, each column here is a different reading metrics, and each row would be a layer. So as you go up in the figure, you are going up in the transformer, okay? This is Llama 2, normal encoder model, decoder model. This is the same model, but after post-training. This is why they have here the chat. This is a reward model that is actually based on this model. And this is an encoder model based on BERT. And the main thing that we observe, these are only part of the results, but we observe it in all the models that we try, is that the results first, they were very similar on different reading metrics. No, like you see, like the patterns are very, very similar in each row per each figure, in each column, sorry, per each figure. And that encoder models, even whether they were before, after post-training or reward model, usually the layers that correlate more were middle layers, which actually it aligned with other findings in the literature. And that encoder models like BERT, the layer in general that was aligned more with how people read was the first layer. So then we wanted to compare the difference between chosen and rejected. Here we put only the example for total reading time, but this value would be the correlation. Each two bars is one model, and is the correlation only with the chosen responses and only with the rejected one. So they are ordered by absolute value, and here you can see the difference per model between the chosen and the rejected. Okay. So what we observed, what was interesting is like BERT and Roberta models, even if they are smaller to these ones, to Llama, which is usually around 7 billion. Here we see like 7 billion, 7 billion. This is 13 billion. These ones are less than 1 billion. So the absolute value was higher in encoder models, but the difference between chosen and rejected was smaller. And we also observe, like, if you compare Llama 3 with Llama 2, or for example, Llama 2 with and without post-training, they didn't have much difference. Even reward models that were pretty aligned with the task, they were not systematically given higher correlation. So the next question that we ask ourselves is, okay, if we align it more with the task, will we have higher correlation? So only with the reward models, that would be these UltraRM, QRM, and Euros. So until now, we were only inputting the response. You input the response to the model, you measure the matrix of the attention, and you compare it with the amount of time people were putting it for, not like simple. But the reward models, actually, they are trained to rank the combination of prompt and response. So it's exactly what our users, what our participants were doing. So we asked, okay, if we align it more, how it will change the correlation. So here on this plot, it's exactly what I was explaining, chosen, rejected, and for each model. But when we see the R here, it's the same model, but with this template. So in this case, we were inputting like some special tokens, the prompt, special tokens again, and the response. But we are comparing the attention only on the response. But what is interesting here is that when we were aligning more the task with what participants did, like saying the attention on the response, taking into account the prompt, the correlation was always higher. You see here that this is higher than this is higher than this, and this is higher than this. So with this, we finished this project. And yeah, the main conclusions here are like, we released this data set. It's open if anyone has interest in doing another analysis or use it. But we proved that there is a difference, and there were also some interesting insights when we were comparing the attention. So we think like this is a good first step and a good proof of concept to actually trying to see the potential of this kind of signals into the human alignment framework. What we propose here is, okay, now what happens if we actually try to improve this accuracy? Like this was more like creating a data set and the first analysis. What happens if we actually switch to improving it? And this leads us to our last project. First, I'm going to do an introduction based on the first review that I was saying, like what we found in the literature and we published in the review before going to this project. So we found like different tasks. Here I put some examples, but people were using eye tracking on, for example, language generation or question answering. Or here I put the glue benchmark part, like sentiment classification, hate detection, sarcasm detection, like different tasks, but no one in the task that we wanted to solve, like human alignment. And finally, there were like different ways of adding this signal, because you will have like your normal transformer, and now you have this new reading information or cognitive information. How can you actually add this information to the transformer? So in our review, we categorized it in 6 categories, the works that we found. I'm going to explain really briefly each of them. But what you see here is like, it's a normal transformer, okay? Usually you have the tokens, the embedding layer, and then you have the different amount of layers and different amount of heads, but in general, they follow this architecture. And the pink dots are actually the cognitive embedding. So this is the text, your normal input, and these are different ways of adding the information. So the first one, here I put the works that we found that were categorized in this category, like they were using this in this way. But yeah, I won't go into the detailing in the project, but if someone is curious, like the name of the framework is here, and they are adding the information as I'm going to explain. So in this case, you will have the cognitive data, and you will have your normal embeddings, and you will concatenate it. So this is your new input. Obviously, after the embedding, like you have text embedding, cognitive embedding, you concatenate everything, and it's your new input. The second phase is with the attention. So it has sense, like this is going to measure how the transformer is putting attention on different embeddings, and we can change them based on the attention that people were putting. So the second method they obviously use different ways, but they somehow change the attention based on the cognitive data. And so the third method will be cross-attention. In a normal GPT model or decoder model, usually the query, the key, and the value came from the same embedding. But in cross-attention, you will have a different embedding here. So imagine like now your query will be the cognitive embedding. Here, like before, the 3, 1 were coming from the same, and now is your cognitive embedding the query. The next one is, now we don't have more information, but we change the order of the information we have. So you have your text, you compute the embeddings, and you switch the order of the embeddings based on how people were reading it. So for example, if you read the third word before the second, you will change the embedding order. But you have the same information. This is now your new input, and then yeah, you have like your normal model. Finally, you have the encoder, and you will have like your cognitive signal, your normal embedding, and you will encode it. And this is your new embedding. Instead of just inputting this, you will input an embedding that has learned how to combine these 2 modalities. And finally, other people were using multitask learning. So you will have your normal task, your language model, you have your loss, whether it's correctly classify, the modality of the test or whatever task. And then you have like the reading metrics, okay? And you have this loss on actually predict how people is going to read it. And in multitask learning, ideally, combining these 2 losses, you will improve the accuracy on this loss, on this task. So this is how they were doing it, and taking all of this into account, we decided like we were going to use the concatenation of the input, and we created this framework. So again, a very small recap. We are trying to improve human alignment, and now we are going to improve this reward model. Like we have already proved that there is something here, so let's see if we can improve the accuracy of this reward model. That the accuracy is like giving more score to the response that you prefer. And another small recap, there are not enough data, so there are these models that actually predict these reading metrics that we are going to use. So we created this project that we published also last year. And again, I'm going to cover it briefly, but with the QR you can have more detail. It's the same framework. Now you have like the prompt, you have the response, you have the reward model, but now we are going to use also the cognitive signal here that we see here, no? To predict this value, but the loss function is going to be the same. So in our paper, we created different ways of adding this information here. We call it gaze concat and gaze add. We use different generative models here to predict this eye tracking data. We use different combinations and we use different models, okay? And also these backup models and different data sets here of the prompt and the response. So this is our main architecture. We have the prompt, the response. We produce this eye tracking data. We project it in the same dimension. And again, we have these pink cognitive embeddings, okay, that based on eye tracking feeding metrics. So now in the third phase, you can add it element-wise, that we call it gaze add, or you can concatenate it. And you have your new embedding that we plotted purple. So on your normal task, with the prompt, the response, now this is your combined embedding, and it's the normal reward modeling task. You want more score here than in the rejected. So this will be your loss. So as I was explaining, the state of the art when we started this is like, okay, eye tracking has proved to be useful in other NLP tasks. And there is also this open question, no? Like, which is the best way of actually model what people like? Other people were using like fine-grained rewards. Other people is using these process-based reward models. There is also a lot of now synthetic feedback, no? Like maybe using another LLM to give feedback. But in general, it's explicit feedback, like ranking it or saying whether it's useful or not, harmful or not. But in general, it's split it. So we thought, okay, let's try for the first time to add this implicit feedback and see how the reward model accuracy responds. This is our methodology, is what I have explained until now, but with a little bit more detail. Again, we have the prompt, different responses. We do like binary combinations, like you prefer response 1/2, and you have text, okay? Until now, the same model. You go through the embedding layer, you have test embeddings, and it will go directly to the reward model that I was explaining at the beginning of the presentation. As I was saying, a reward model is a large language model that the last layer is a regression layer, and it will output a scalar. You got the scalar of the response chosen, this loss, this reward, higher than this one. And this is what you optimize. But now the input test would also go to the generative model. It will produce reading metrics that we are going to project on the same dimension. And we're going to whether concatenate it, whether add it, but this is our new input to the model. So our baseline is the same model, but without like the blue embedding. And we compare it with the combined embedding. We use two methods, as I was saying, concatenating and adding. We use two data sets. The first one is Open Assistant. It's the same that we use in the first project. And the other one is Helpster 2, that is the same idea, no? Like people rating prompts and responses, and both of them were in English. And there is this training set that we train the model, the validation set that we use to do some hyperparameter tuning, and then the results that we're going to show are on the test set. As background models, we were using Llama 3, the same model, but after post-training, Llama 3 Instruct, and Mistral, that were the state of the art when we started this project a little bit more than 1 year ago. And we are going to combine the features in different ways with different generative models. So these are the results. We see each table per its data set, each column is a model, and each row is a combination. You can see it like a binary problem, a binary classification problem. Like if you give more score to the response that you should have given more score, no? So like your baseline is random, 0.5. In our case, the baseline is the model without any cognitive data. For example, this model will be trained on the same backbone, on the same data set, and this model would be on the same backbone, same data set, but concatenating the information of one of the generative models using only one reading metric. The best result is bold, and the second one is underscore. But what we see here is that it doesn't matter the model, or it doesn't matter the way we add this information. In general, the results were better always than not adding this data. No, so So to wrap it up, we think like there is a good first step in this direction, no, of adding this information and improve actually the accuracy. Probably there is information there that can actually improve how we model user preferences. We use some open source models. And yeah, obviously, like even that the data set were used at that point of fine-tune models, there are bigger data sets, and the models that we are using nowadays, they are trained on more data, no? And we only try with English data, but we think it's a good first step. In fact, in this project, what we propose as future work was actually take this reward model and see if you improve the accuracy later on reinforcement learning. And it was not us, but another researchers have actually tried and published it like 2 months ago. So it was actually improving, so good news. So to finish the presentation, we have created this dataset for the first time. We have released it with analysis, and we have created a framework where you can improve like the reward model accuracy. One of the challenges that we see on this field is like there is obviously eye tracking data scarcity. Even if you use generative models, probably they are not yet, or they haven't been training enough data to actually predict really well how people are going to read the data. So how people are going to read text. So we think like probably the bottleneck now is there, like collecting more data. But we see a huge opportunity now with the rise of visual large language models, because now you don't have only the text, you have the visual stimuli. It's actually what we're working on. So now you can also enrich the model with information on how someone will look at the image. I put here an example of what we're working on, that this is a paper that is now under review. So in this case, we will collect again participants and we will ask them to solve this question. What are the prominent objects in the image? And we see like a train station, and we see like a lot of focus is on the train, and here on the surrounded. And this, we see the attention of lava model, and we see like there are some attention sinks. This phenomenon of attention sinks has been already studied, and in fact now there are a lot of research linking it with hallucination. So we think it's like a really interesting area of research trying to actually improve the accuracy of these models with information of how people are actually looking to the images, with the saliency in this case. So with this, I finish my presentation. I put here the acknowledgement of the projects and the organisms that have been funding my research.
Yeah, so it was a really great session. So if anyone has any question, can directly unmute and ask Angela, or you can put in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, I see a question here. Why do you think? Okay, I will read. Hi, Angela. Thank you for the talk. I found the layer-wise correlation analysis fascinating. Why do you think the coder models like Llama align with cognitive signals in the middle layers, while encoders align with the first layers? Does this suggest we should be targeting a specific layer for cognitive injection during the optimization of larger models? Okay, so yeah, it's a very interesting question, because even now there is this line of research that is actually studying what is going on in different layers. And they have found in decoder models like Llama that the middle layers, usually they have like more information than the final layers. Sometimes the final layers in this kind of models, they are very specific to the task, for example, language generation. But there is a better representation and more semantic and syntactic information in the middle layers. So we think that this is why it was correlating more, because in these layers, maybe the process that is going on is more similar to the process that we do, and in the final layers, probably the process is different to what we do. At the same time, what we thought when we saw these results is like models like BERT, they are bidirectional, like each token can pay attention to each token, which is it's very interesting, because when we read, we kind of pay attention to everything. Like we can go backwards, and so once you have read a word, you can go after having read another. So maybe this is why the first layer, that they already have information of everything, because they can pay attention to everything, they correlate more with humans, or with human attention. But yeah, like definitely not only because of this eye tracking correlation, but there are already works going on studying that maybe the accuracy of some tasks can be improved if we don't use the last layers, but the middle layers. Okay, another question. Are there any plans to work with different cognitive data in the future? Are ERP signal used currently in similar research? Okay, so yeah, this is a question that I was asked myself. So there is other people using neuroimaging techniques. In fact, we have also some works there. The problem is that there is even more data scarcity. I guess that with ERP, you mean like this, that you can measure with EEG. The thing is that there are some works actually using EEG that they are actually improving SNLP task with the EEG signals, maybe after some post-processing, but and there are even some works that they are improving with the EEG signals, predicting the word that people is thinking of. No, like if I have the brain signals, I can predict that my next word is going to be, I don't know, hello. But yeah, ERP, I'm not sure. I'm not super expert in neuroscience, but I'm not sure because while you are reading, it's very difficult to measure ERP or to know to which word is correlated. No, like another colleagues have used ERP, but maybe on more like visual tasks. But I'm not sure if it's possible to use it in NLP. I haven't seen many works using it. Thank you.
Yes, I have one question. So you talked about eye tracking. So have you found a case where a person's eye like disagree with what they actually want to say?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So you talked about eye tracking, right? Yeah. So have you found a case while working on this model where a person eyes disagree with what a human actually want to say?
Yeah. In fact, like especially with visual stimuli, we have found that there is a huge difference between what someone is paying attention to. For example, as I was explaining in the last slide, no, like if a human is trying to answer a question, where it's going to put the attention in an image or even in the text. Usually, it's different to whether the model is putting the attention. No? And yet, this opens the question whether we should force the model to actually work more or behave more like a human or not.
Does anyone has any more question? I think we are good to go. Thanks,
Okay.
Angela, for joining, and it was a really great session.
Okay, thank you for attending.
Bye.
Bye.